My sister accused me of stealing her $42,000 Cartier bracelet just to get me disowned. My parents called me a family thief and kicked me out into the storm. They didn't know I was secretly paying their beach house mortgage and my sister's leased Bentley. So I wiped the rain from my face, tapped cancel on every auto pay, and watched their perfect life crack. What happened next? The rain was sideways when the front door closed behind me. Not a drizzle, not a spring shower, a full electrical storm, the kind that turns the sky green at the edges and makes the street gutters run like rivers. April in this part of the country means weather that can go from warm to violent in 20 minutes, and it had gone violent 10 minutes before my father told me to get out of his house. My overnight bag hit the porch steps first, then my jacket thrown by my mother from the doorway because touching it long enough to hand it to me would have meant looking at me, and Charlotte Covington was not going to look at her older daughter while calling her a thief. The jacket landed in a puddle at the bottom of the steps. I picked it up. The lining was already soaked. Behind me, through the glass storm door, I could hear Monroe crying. Not real crying, performance crying. The kind that requires an audience and a tissue and someone to hold her shoulder while she explains how violated she feels. Monroe is very good at that kind of crying. She has been doing it since she was 6 years old and discovered that tears from the younger daughter carry more weight than facts from the older one. 30 minutes earlier, I had been sitting on the couch in my parents' beach house living room, eating takeout from a container with a plastic fork, watching the storm build through the bay window. It was supposed to be a family weekend. Monroe was there with her boyfriend Tristan, a personal trainer with a leased Range Rover and a talent for saying nothing at exactly the right volume. My parents had opened wine. The house smelled like the lavender candles Charlotte buys in bulk from a catalog. Then Monroe looked at me across the room and said, "I want to talk about my Cartier bracelet." The bracelet was a Cartier Love, 18-karat white gold, size 17. I knew the specifications because I am a senior gemologist at Harland and Gray Fine Jewelers. I authenticate, appraise, and acquire luxury pieces for a living. I handle Cartier inventory 3 times a week. Monroe's bracelet was a gift from a man she dated for 4 months 2 years ago. He spent $42,000 on it. She spent 4 months pretending to love him. The bracelet lasted longer than the relationship. "I noticed it was missing 2 weeks ago," Monroe said. She was standing now, arms crossed, positioned between my parents like a witness at a trial. I looked everywhere. My jewelry box, my safe, my travel case. Gone. And the only person who has been in my apartment in the last month, the only person who knows what a Cartier Love is worth and how to sell one without getting caught, is sitting right there. She pointed at me. My father set down his wine glass. My mother's hand went to her mouth. Tristan leaned against the kitchen counter and watched like a man who had already been briefed. "You have always been jealous of me, Paige. Always. You sit in that little shop squinting at other people's diamonds through a magnifying glass because you will never have one of your own. 34 years old, no ring, no man, no children, just a studio apartment and a job that pays you to touch things you cannot afford. You took my bracelet because touching beautiful things is the closest you will ever get to owning them." I did not respond. Not because I had nothing to say, because I was watching my parents' faces and measuring how long it would take them to ask Monroe for proof. They did not ask. Edmund stood up from his chair. His face was the color of the wine he had been drinking. "Is this true, Paige? Did you take your sister's bracelet?" "No." "Monroe says you were the only one with access." "Monroe is wrong." Charlotte shook her head. The gesture was small and final, the way she shakes her head when she has already decided and the conversation is just a formality she is enduring out of politeness. "You work with jewelry. You know how to sell it. You have access to dealers and resale shops. I do not want to believe it, but it makes sense, Paige. It makes terrible sense." It does not make sense. I did not take anything. Monroe's voice climbed. Then where is it? Where is my $42,000 bracelet? Because I did not lose it, and I did not sell it, and the only person in my apartment who handles luxury jewelry for a living is you. Edmund pointed at the door. Get out. Dad, get out of my house. I will not have a thief under this roof, a family thief. Your mother and I have given you everything, and this is what you do. You steal from your own sister. Charlotte opened the front door. The storm poured in. Rain hit the hardwood and puddled near the threshold. She did not step aside for me to pass comfortably. She stood in the gap and waited for me to squeeze by. I picked up my overnight bag. I walked to the door. I stopped in front of Charlotte and looked at her. She looked at the floor. Family thief, Edmund said behind me. The words landed on my back like something thrown. Do not come back until you return what you took. The door closed. I stood on the porch in the rain. My bag was on my shoulder. My jacket was soaked. The pearl stud earrings my grandmother Lillian had given me on my 18th birthday were still in my ears, small and cold against the wind. I touched the left one with my thumb. It was real. It did not need to be expensive to be real. Lillian said that when she gave them to me. She said, "Remember the difference between real and expensive. Monroe does not know it. You do." I stood in the storm for 90 seconds. Then I pulled my phone from my pocket, wiped the screen with my wet palm, and opened my banking app. The first auto pay was the Beach House mortgage, $4,200 a month. I had been paying it for 3 years because Edmund's retirement income from his regional sales manager pension covered the property taxes, but not the note. And Charlotte would rather let the house foreclose than admit to her tennis friends at the club that they could not afford it. I set up the auto pay the week they almost missed the second payment. I never told them. They never asked why the bank stopped calling. Cancel. The second auto pay was Monroe's Bentley Continental GT lease, $3,800 a month. Monroe's Instagram income covered her nails, her lash appointments, and her restaurant tabs. It did not cover a Bentley. She leased it after scraping together a larger down payment to qualify on her own credit, but the monthly was more than she could carry. She called me crying at 11 p.m. and said she would lose the car within 2 months. I set up an auto pay from my account for the full monthly amount. Not as a co-signer, as a sister who believed the tears. I had been paying it for 14 months. Cancel. The third was Charlotte's supplemental medical, $940 a month. I set it up after her knee surgery 2 years ago because the primary plan did not cover the physical therapy, and Charlotte told me the copays were crushing. Cancel. I stood in the rain with my phone in my hand and watched 3 confirmation screens load one after another. 3 green check marks, 3 payments that had been quietly keeping the Covington family's life from cracking along the seams that nobody talked about. Total monthly, $8,940. Total since I started, over $180,000. Gone in 45 seconds while the storm blew rain through my hair and my sister's performance crying echoed behind the glass. If you are new here, welcome to Karma Unfolded. This is the story of how my family called me a thief for a bracelet I never touched, and what happened when the person they threw into the rain turned out to be the person holding up the roof. I need to explain how we got here because the storm is not the beginning. The beginning is the arithmetic of my family, which has always worked the same way. Monroe spends, I cover, Charlotte pretends, Edmund does not ask. Monroe is 4 years younger than me. She's beautiful in the way that algorithms reward. Symmetrical face, long hair, curated wardrobe, the kind of presence that makes strangers offer her free things in restaurants because they assume she is someone. She built an Instagram following on lifestyle content, which means she posts photographs of things she does not own in places she cannot afford, and captions them with words like blessed and grateful, and this life. Her actual income from brand partnerships and sponsorships is around $31,000 a year. Her expenses, including the Bentley, the apartment in the Arts District, the bi-weekly lash fills, and the restaurants where she photographs her food before eating it, total around $74,000. The math has never worked. It was never supposed to. I am the math. I work at Harland and Gray Fine Jewelers, a family-owned shop on Merchant Row that has been operating since 1961. I am a GIA-certified senior gemologist. I authenticate diamonds, evaluate estate pieces, source acquisition inventory, and provide professional appraisals for insurance companies. My salary is $89,000. I live alone in a studio apartment that costs $1,350 a month. I own my car outright. I have a retirement account with $100,000 to $12,000 in it that nobody in my family knows about because nobody has ever asked me what I am saving. They only know what I am spending, and what I am spending is them. I do not have an Instagram account. I have a loop, a spectroscope, a pair of calibrated tweezers, and a client list that includes 3 insurance adjusters who call me directly when a claim involves a high-value piece. Monroe once described my job to a room of people at Thanksgiving as, "She squints at rocks for a living." Charlotte laughed. Edmund did not correct either of them. Lillian, my grandmother, looked at Monroe and said, "The woman who squints at rocks is the one paying for the turkey you are eating." Nobody laughed at that. Nobody brought it up again either. The financial arrangement was not negotiated. It was assumed. The beach house mortgage started 3 years ago when Edmund retired early from his regional sales manager job with a pension that covered property taxes and groceries, but not the $4,200 monthly note on a house Charlotte insisted they keep because the club was nearby and selling would mean explaining why. I set up the auto pay the week after they almost missed the second consecutive payment. They never thanked me. They never acknowledged it. The payment simply appeared, and the subject was sealed shut by mutual silence. Monroe's Bentley started 14 months ago. She called me at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday, crying, saying she was going to lose the car because the monthly payment was more than her income could cover. The lease was in her name only. She had qualified by putting down a larger deposit, but the $3,800 monthly was drowning her. I set up the auto pay from my account the same week because she was my sister, and because I mistook her distress for need instead of entitlement. Monroe never contributed a single month from her own account. She never offered. She posted a video of herself getting the keys with the caption, "Manifestation works," and it got 4,200 likes. None of those people paid for it. I did. Charlotte's supplemental insurance started 2 years ago after her knee surgery, $940 a month. The primary plan covered the procedure, but not the 12 weeks of physical therapy, and Charlotte told me the co-pays were crushing us. I set it up. She did not say thank you. She said, "You are a good daughter, Paige." She said it the way someone says good dog when the animal brings the newspaper. I almost called Monroe from the car that night. My thumb was on her name, but the rain on the windshield was too loud for a conversation that needed quiet, and the pearl earrings were still in my ears, and Lillian's voice was still in my head saying, "Remember the difference." So I drove to a hotel, checked in, set my wet jacket on the bathroom door hook, and opened my laptop. If Monroe's Cartier bracelet was missing, there were only 2 possibilities. Either someone took it, or Monroe moved it herself. And every Cartier love bracelet manufactured after 2009 carries a unique serial number engraved inside the hinge clasp. The number is registered to the original purchaser and tracked through every authorized service event, repair, and resale certification. If that bracelet existed anywhere in the authenticated secondary market, any consignment shop, any resale platform, any estate dealer who runs serial verification, I could find it. Because finding luxury pieces that someone claims are lost is not a side skill. It is the core of what I do 3 times a week. The next morning, I opened my laptop at the hotel desk. The room was $127 a night. The first night I had paid for myself in 3 years that did not include paying for someone else at the same time. I logged into the GIA and Cartier Professional Authentication Registry that Harland & Gray subscribes to as part of our dealer certification. I typed in the bracelet's serial number, which I had recorded 18 months earlier when Monroe asked me to appraise the piece for her insurance writer. I had noted the serial, the weight, the carat purity, the hallmark position, and the clasp condition in my professional database. I do this for every significant piece I handle, including pieces that belong to family, especially pieces that belong to family, because sentiment does not change the fact that a $42,000 piece of jewelry needs documentation. The search returned. One result. The bracelet had been consigned at Holbrook Fine Consignment on March 28, 2026, 14 days before Monroe reported it stolen to our parents on April 11th. The consignment price was $38,500, which is standard secondary market range for a pre-owned Cartier Love in 18-karat white gold with original box and authentication paperwork. The consigning party was listed by last name and first initial, Covington. M. Monroe had sold her own bracelet 2 weeks before she accused me of stealing it. I sat at the hotel desk for a long time. The laptop screen reflected in the dark window behind it. My hands were flat on the desk the way they go flat when I am examining a stone under magnification, and I need absolute stillness to see the inclusion. My sister had sold her bracelet, collected $38,500, and then stood in our parents' living room 14 days later and pointed at me and called me a thief and a jealous, childless woman who would never own anything beautiful. She did it with witnesses. She did it during a storm. She planned the timing, the setting, and the emotional architecture of the accusation. She chose the night of the storm because she knew the weather would make the moment feel biblical and the memory permanent. I called Gemma Holbrook. Gemma runs Holbrook Fine Consignment on Ashland Avenue, a shop I have done professional business with for 7 years. She is 56 years old, meticulous about documentation, and she does not consign anything over $5,000 without a signed agreement, a government-issued ID, and a photograph of the consigning party holding the piece. Gemma, it is Paige. I need to ask about a Cartier Love that came through your shop on March 28th. White gold, size 17, serial ending in 4471. I remember it. Beautiful piece. Clean condition. The seller brought it in with the original box and the certificate of authenticity. The seller's name: Monroe Covington. I have her driver's license on file and her signature on the consignment agreement. She said she was downsizing her collection. I almost hung up and drove to my parents' house right then, but the consignment agreement was only the first layer. There was a second one underneath it, and I could feel its weight the way I feel an inclusion in a stone before I see it. Something under the surface, something structural. If you have been following this story and you feel the weight building, subscribe to Karma Unfolded, because the bracelet was not the only thing Monroe was trying to cash out. Then the second layer found me. On April 14th, an insurance adjuster named Colleen from Whitmore Casualty called Harland & Gray. She was working a jewelry theft claim and needed authentication on a Cartier Love bracelet. The original appraisal had been done by our shop, and she needed the appraiser of record to verify the specifications for the claim file. The appraiser of record was me. Colleen sent me the claim number, and I pulled it up through our standard interinstitutional verification process. The claim was filed on April 12th by Monroe Covington, 1 day after she reported the bracelet stolen on April 11th. The declared cause of loss was theft by a family member. The replacement value claimed was $42,000. The family member suspected of the theft was listed as Paige Covington, senior gemologist, Harland & Gray Fine Jewelers. My own name was on the claim. My own profession was cited as the method. My own sister had named me as the thief on an insurance form, and the insurance company had sent the authentication request to my own desk. Monroe had filed a fraudulent insurance claim for $42,000 on a bracelet she had already sold for $38,500. She was collecting on both ends: the consignment money from the sale, the insurance payout from the theft. Total, $80,500 for a single bracelet. And the thief she invented was me. I called Colleen back. I told her that the bracelet serial number was currently listed as consigned at Holbrook Fine Consignment, received on March 28th, 14 days before the reported theft date. I told her I could provide a certified copy of the consignment agreement showing the claimant's own signature. The line was quiet for 8 seconds. Ms. Covington, we are escalating this claim to our Special Investigations Unit. If you have documentation supporting what you have described, we will need it within 48 hours. I had it within 24. Gemma sent me the certified consignment agreement, Monroe's ID scan, and the intake photograph. I forwarded everything to the insurance company and to Nico Draper, my attorney, who handles insurance fraud and civil disputes. Nico reviewed the file and said 3 words: "This is clean." Before the confrontation, I drove to Ridgewood Assisted Living to see my grandmother, Lillian. She is 84 years old, sharp in the way that women who have watched 3 generations make the same mistakes are sharp. Living in a room with a window that faces the parking lot, a bookshelf full of mysteries she has already solved, but reads again because the pleasure is in the structure. And a framed photograph of her late husband, Walter, holding a fishing rod in 1978. Lillian does not use a smartphone. She does not follow Monroe on Instagram. She sends birthday cards with checks for $25 and a single sentence of advice that is always worth more than the check. I sat in the chair next to her bed. She was wearing a cardigan the color of oatmeal and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She looked at my earrings before she looked at my face. "You are still wearing them. Every day. Good. They suit you. They are the only real thing in that family besides you and me, and I am running out of time to be real." She took my hand. Her fingers were thin, but her grip was not. "What did they do?" I told her. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said something I did not expect. "Monroe called me 2 weeks ago. She asked if I would talk to your father about increasing her monthly allowance from Edmund's pension. I told her no. I told her that Edmund's pension barely covers his own bills and that she needed to learn what the inside of a budget looks like. She hung up without saying goodbye. Lillian paused. 2 weeks ago, the same week she sold the bracelet. She looked at me with the kind of clarity that does not soften anything. "Your grandfather gave me a pearl necklace in 1964. It cost him $40. He drove 40 minutes to a shop in Ridgedale because it was the only place that sold real freshwater pearls at a price a machinist could afford. I wore it every day for 47 years until the clasp broke. Your mother once asked me why I did not upgrade to something nicer. I told her the necklace was not about the pearl. It was about the man who measured what he could give and gave exactly that." She squeezed my hand. "Paige, go get what's yours, not the bracelet. The truth. That is worth more than anything Cartier ever stamped." I drove to the beach house on April 16th, 5 days after the storm. The weather had cleared, the sky was pale blue and empty. I parked behind Edmund's sedan and sat in my car for 2 minutes with the engine off, holding the folder of evidence on the passenger seat. The earrings were in my ears. Lillian's voice was in my head. Monroe's Bentley was in the driveway. Tristan's Range Rover was behind it, both leased, one by Monroe, one by Tristan. Neither of them could afford the insurance on either vehicle without external money, my money, which was no longer coming. I knocked. Edmund opened the door. His face went through surprise, then anger, then the stiff politeness of a man who does not want a scene on a porch that faces the ocean. "I told you not to come back. I am here because I have something to show you, all of you. It will take 10 minutes. He let me in because Edmund has never been able to close a door on someone who speaks calmly. Charlotte was at the kitchen island. Monroe was on the couch with her phone. Tristan was by the window. Nobody said hello. I set the folder on the dining table and opened it. Monroe, you reported your Cartier bracelet stolen on April 11th. You told this family that I took it. Dad called me a family thief. Mom threw my jacket into the rain. You filed an insurance claim on April 12th for $42,000, listing the cause of loss as theft by a family member. You named me. Monroe set her phone down. Her eyes went to the folder. The bracelet was not stolen. You consigned it at Holbrook Fine Consignment on March 28th, 14 days before you reported it missing. You walked into the shop with the original box and certificate, presented your driver's license, signed a consignment agreement, and received $38,500. I laid the consignment agreement on the table, Monroe's signature, Monroe's photo, the date, March 28th, 2026. This is a certified copy of the agreement. Gemma Holbrook provided it along with your ID scan and the intake photo. Monroe's face did not change. Not yet. She was calculating. I could see it. The same expression she wears when she is editing an Instagram caption, testing which version of herself will work best for the audience. That is not my signature. Gemma photographs every consignor holding the piece at intake. This is you, in Holbrook's shop, holding the bracelet on March 28th. I set the photo on the table. Monroe, smiling, holding a white gold Cartier love bracelet in her left hand, Holbrook's front counter visible behind her. Charlotte picked up the photo. Her hand was shaking. The insurance claim you filed lists the cause as theft. The bracelet was not stolen. It was sold by you. 14 days before you accused me. You were collecting on both sides. $38,500 from the consignment, $42,000 from the insurance payout, $80,500 total for a bracelet you no longer owned. That is insurance fraud. Edmund sat down. He did not choose to sit. His knees made the decision for him. He lowered himself into the dining chair and his hands went to the table edge. Charlotte pressed both palms against the countertop and stared at a point on the granite that was not there. Monroe's calculation broke. The mass cracked from the center outward the way a windshield cracks when the stone hits the exact point where all the tension meets. You do not understand. I had debt. $67,000 across 4 credit cards. The minimum payments were eating me alive. I needed the consignment money for the cards and the insurance money to clear the rest. It was a plan. It was supposed to work. Nobody was supposed to get hurt. I got hurt, Monroe. You stood in this room and called me a thief in front of our parents. You attacked my profession, my appearance, my life. You told me I would never own anything beautiful. And then Dad called me a family thief and Mom threw my jacket into a puddle, and I stood in the rain while you cried on cue, inside a house that my auto pay has been keeping from the bank for 3 years. Charlotte spoke for the first time. Her voice was thin. You have been paying the mortgage? For 36 months, $4,200 a month. You did not know because you never asked. The same way you did not ask for proof before you threw your daughter into a storm. Edmund looked at Charlotte. Charlotte looked at the floor. Neither of them looked at Monroe. Monroe tried again. She always tries again. Paige, we can fix this. Nobody has to know. I will withdraw the insurance claim. I will tell Mom and Dad the truth, and I will split the consignment money with you, $19,000 each, clean. We move on. The insurance company does not need to know. A bribe. She was offering me half of the money she received from selling her own bracelet and framing me for the theft. She was offering me a cut of her crime as if it were a business proposal. You sold your own bracelet March 28th. Holbrook's has your signature. The serial number matches. The only thief here is you. Monroe's body changed. Her posture collapsed forward. Her hands went to her knees and her head dropped and her breathing became the kind of breathing that happens when the audience has left and the performance has nowhere to go. Tristan stepped toward her and then stopped because there was nothing to say, and he knew it. The insurance company's Special Investigations Unit has already been notified. The serial number cross-reference confirmed that the bracelet was consigned, not stolen. Your claim has been flagged for fraud. My attorney, Nico Draper, has provided the documentation. If the investigation confirms what the file already shows, you are looking at a fraudulent insurance claim on a $42,000 policy. That carries felony exposure in this state. Tristan pushed off from the window frame and walked toward the kitchen, not toward Monroe, away from her. He picked up his car keys from the counter and held them in his fist without moving toward the door. He was calculating his distance from the situation in real time. I looked at my parents. Edmund was staring at the consignment agreement with the expression of a man reading a receipt for something he cannot return. Charlotte was standing with both hands on the counter and her eyes closed, the way she closes them during turbulence on airplanes, as if not seeing the problem could delay its arrival. You called me a family thief. You kicked me into a storm. You did not ask Monroe for proof. You did not call me the next morning to check if I had somewhere to sleep. You chose Monroe because Monroe is the daughter you understand. She is pretty, and she posts photographs, and she makes this family look the way you want it to look at the club. I am the daughter who pays for the way it looks, and you never once in 3 years asked how the mortgage kept getting paid. You never asked how Monroe's Bentley stayed in the driveway on a $31,000 income. You never asked because the answer would have meant saying, "Thank you." And this family does not say thank you to the person holding it up. It says, "Get out." I looked at Edmund directly. I paid $180,000 into this family over 3 years. Not $1 was acknowledged. Not once did you say thank you. Not once did you ask where the money came from. You know what Monroe spent in the same period? $67,000 she did not have, across 4 credit cards, plus a bracelet scheme that would make an insurance adjuster laugh if it were not a crime. Edmund tried to speak. He said my name and then stopped. He said it again, and the sentence after it did not arrive. He was a man standing in a house he could not afford, learning that the daughter he threw into the rain was the daughter keeping the roof over his head. The information was too large for the space he had built to contain it. Charlotte's hands had not left the countertop. Her knuckles were white against the granite. She was looking at Monroe now, not at me, and the look on her face was not anger. It was the kind of exhaustion that comes when you realize the version of your family you have been performing for 30 years just fell off the stage in front of an audience. Mom, Dad. My voice dropped to the register I use at work when I deliver an appraisal that disappoints someone. Flat. Final. This is the last payment, the last lease, the last insurance premium. I am done funding a family that calls me a thief when the thief is sitting on that couch refreshing her follower count. Do not call me. Do not text. If Monroe's insurance situation requires my testimony, Nico will coordinate. That is the only channel that stays open. I almost turned and left without looking at Monroe, but Lillian's voice was in my head, the voice from the assisted living room, steady and clear. Go get what is yours, not the bracelet, the truth. And the truth was not finished until Monroe heard it from the person she had framed. The bracelet was worth $42,000. You sold it to cover debt you ran up pretending to live a life you could not afford. Then you accused me of stealing it so you could collect insurance and clear the rest. You destroyed my relationship with our parents for a cash advance, and you did it in a storm because you knew the weather would make it feel like a movie. I picked up my folder. I walked to the door. Nobody stopped me. Nobody followed. The door closed behind me the same way it had 5 days earlier, except this time I was dry, the sky was clear, and the only thing I was carrying was the truth. If this story hit you somewhere real, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Karma Unfolded. The beach house mortgage went 30 days late on May 1st. The bank sent a notice to Edmund and Charlotte, a white envelope with a red stripe that Charlotte found in the mailbox on a Tuesday morning. Edmund called the lender. The representative told him that the account had been paid by automated transfer from a third-party account for 36 consecutive months, and that the transfers had been permanently canceled on April 11th. Edmund asked whose account the payments had come from. The representative said the account holder's name was Paige Covington. Edmund hung up the phone and sat at the kitchen counter for 40 minutes. Charlotte found him there when she came in from the garage. He was holding the mortgage statement in one hand and a calculator in the other. His pension income was $3,100 a month. The mortgage was $4,200. The math had a deficit of $1,100 that had been invisible for 3 years because his older daughter had been filling it in silence. Charlotte did not go to the country club the following Tuesday, or the Tuesday after that. Her tennis partner, a woman named Fiona, called twice. Charlotte did not answer. She was sitting at the kitchen counter in the beach house, looking at the same mortgage statement Edmund had been looking at, doing the same math, arriving at the same number that Paige had been arriving at for 36 months. The difference was that Paige had solved it. Charlotte could not. Monroe's Bentley Continental GT was repossessed on May 8th. Monroe had already been 60 days behind on insurance and registration fees before I canceled the lease payment, and the missed April payment triggered an accelerated review clause in her lease agreement. The lease company sent a recovery driver to the Covington Beach House at 7 a.m. on a Thursday. Monroe was inside, still asleep, when the flatbed backed into the driveway. She heard the hydraulic ramp deploy and came to the window in a bathrobe. The vanity plates that said MNROE were still on the brackets when the car went up the ramp. The driver left a receipt and a lease termination notice in the mailbox next to the mortgage late notice. 2 envelopes, one from a bank and one from a lease company, side by side in a mailbox that used to contain nothing but catalogs and club invitations. Monroe's Instagram account, which had posted a photograph of the Bentley with the caption, "Morning Vibes" 6 months earlier, went silent on May 9th. The day after the repossession, she posted nothing. The day after that, nothing. The followers who had commented, "Goals" and "Living the Dream" and "You Inspire Me, Queen" under the Bentley posts did not notice the car was gone for 11 days. When they did, some sent DMs asking if she had traded up. She did not reply. The follower count, which had peaked at 84,200, began dropping, 50 a day, then 100. Not because anyone knew about the insurance fraud or the consignment scheme, simply because an influencer who stops posting becomes a memory, and memories do not hold follower counts. The insurance company's Special Investigations Unit formally denied Monroe's claim on May 12th. The denial letter, sent by certified mail, cited the Holbrook consignment records, the serial number match, the 14-day date discrepancy between the sale and the reported theft, and the intake photograph showing Monroe holding the bracelet in the shop. The letter stated that the file had been referred to the county prosecutor for potential charges of insurance fraud. Monroe's attorney, whose retainer Charlotte was funding from the last of her personal savings account, requested a meeting with the lead investigator. The investigator agreed. During the meeting, the investigator asked Monroe directly, under recorded statement, whether she had consigned the bracelet at Holbrook Fine Consignment on March 28, 2026. Monroe's attorney told her not to answer. The investigator noted the refusal in the case file and thanked them for coming. On a Wednesday afternoon in mid-May, Monroe walked into a Bentley dealership on the north side of town, not the one where she had leased the Continental GT, a different one, 20 minutes farther, where nobody would recognize her name from a closed account. She wore sunglasses inside. She asked the finance manager whether there was any way to reinstate a terminated lease or open a new one. The manager pulled up her information in the system, read the screen for 10 seconds, and said, "This account was closed due to non-payment and cosigner withdrawal. Reinstatement is not available. A new application would require independent qualification." Monroe did not leave immediately. She walked through the showroom and sat in a display model, a Continental GT Beluga Black, $247,000 on the window sticker. She put her hands on the steering wheel. The leather was cold because the engine was off and was never going to be on. A sales associate watched from the service desk but did not approach. He had seen this before. People sitting in cars they used to have, holding steering wheels that do not turn, rehearsing a life that has already ended. Monroe sat there for 8 minutes. Then she got out, adjusted her sunglasses, and drove home in the Nissan Sentra she had borrowed from Tristan, who was already looking for a new apartment because the Range Rover was being returned the following week, and the woman he was dating was no longer the woman in the photograph with the Bentley. In the 3rd week of April, before the fallout had fully arrived, I signed a lease on a 1-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor of a building with a balcony that faces east. The rent is $1,250 a month. I pay it from the same account that used to send $8,940 a month to people who called me a thief. The difference between what I was spending on my family and what I now spend on myself is $7,490 a month. That number is mine now. The balcony has a railing with iron bars that catch the morning light and a view of a maple tree that was just starting to leaf when I moved in. I bought a small writing desk and put it by the window. I bought a rug. I bought a velvet jewelry box from a shop on Merchant Row, 3 doors down from Harland and Gray. The box cost $28. It is the color of deep navy, and it opens with a brass hinge that clicks softly, the kind of sound that only matters in a quiet room. On a morning in late April, I stood on that balcony with a cup of coffee. It was raining, not a storm. A soft spring rain, the kind that falls straight down without wind, the kind that makes new leaves shine and washes the street clean without flooding the gutters. The air smelled like wet bark and new growth, a different rain than the one I stood in on April 11th. That rain was horizontal, cold, and thrown at me. This rain was vertical, quiet, and mine. The pearl stud earrings were in the velvet jewelry box on my kitchen counter, resting on the small cushion inside. The box was open. The earrings caught the morning light the same way they caught the light in Lillian's room when she gave them to me 16 years ago. They are worth maybe $300 on the secondary market. I know because I appraised them myself the day after Lillian gave them to me. Not to sell them, to know, to understand the difference between the number on the tag and the weight in my hand. $300, and they are the most valuable thing I own. My phone was on the counter next to the box. The banking app had no pending transfers, no scheduled payments, no outgoing wires to accounts that belong to people who mistake my generosity for weakness and my silence for permission. The only mortgage it monitors is the one I am saving for. The only lease it tracks is my own. The rain fell straight and quiet on the balcony railing. Somewhere across town, a beach house was accumulating late notices. A Bentley was sitting on a dealer lot with the plates removed and the leather going cold. An Instagram feed was going dark, one unfollower at a time, the algorithm already forgetting. The earrings were real. The coffee was hot. The rain sounded different from this side of the door.